Well, to our first conversation now, from having to pay more for fuel after President Tinubu announced discontinuation of petrol subsidy in Nigeria, it looks like Nigerians have to brace for more price increases as a new electricity tariff is due 1st of July, expecting about a 40% increase. For now, joining me is Prospect Madufuro Chairman, Rome Gardens Estate Residents Association. Great to have you on the show. Good morning. Yeah, so I guess we can call it a perfect storm at this point. You're having to pay so much for fuel at this time, and now we're expecting electricity tariffs to actually go up. Help us understand this and why this increase is actually happening again. You know, I remember same time last year this happened, and how does it cut across all bands, all classes of customers? Are they affected with this increase?
Okay, thank you for that important question. From what we understand, all the bands are affected by this increase. We are waiting for the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission to come out with the NYTO for 2023, which will highlight the various bands and the increase that is going to happen as a result. Now, why is this increase happening? It is happening because there have been fundamental changes in the parameters that have been used to set the MYTO 2022. The MYTO is the multi-year tariff order, which is what the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission uses to set the wholesale and retail prices of electricity tariff. Now, these are dependent on critical factors like the exchange rate, is also part of what is used to drive that factor. We also have the issue around the exchange rate and the cost of gas prices. Now, we could see from all these parameters, the inflation. So inflation is there, gas prices are there, we have the rates of dollar. So far now, 2022 MYTO was based on the exchange rate of 441.78 per dollar. Now it's, according to I&E window 2 days ago, it closed at 770. Inflation rate for 2022, which the MYTO 2022 was based on 16.7 inflation rate. Today, inflation rate as at May is running at 22%. So these fundamental changes means that there have to be a review of the tariff. But the question is, by what percentage?
I'm talking about, the floating of the naira and inflation rate, playing into this. There's also that talk about, subsidy in the electricity industry. So that pulling out, some subsidy there. Tell us what you know about this.
Yes. So in addition to these parameters that I mentioned, it's still not enough to meet the cost. So government subsidizes close to 50 billion naira every month, the electricity subsector. And that's a huge cost. And we know that the president, new president in the various market reforms that he has initiated has made it very clear that he wants to do away with subsidy. So this 50 billion naira monthly that, is paid in through subsidizing electricity market. Also, government want to do away with it at the same time. So these are the things that has led to this increase that we're expecting by 1st of July.
And looking at the multi-year tariff order, so that means if inflation, continues to rise, because we've had sticky inflation, for a while now, and with the floating of the naira, if the naira actually devalues, more going forward, that means we're going to expect more increase in tariff. Is that what this means?
That in effect is what that means. However, we expect the government to come in at some point to set boundaries. We know there have been silent increase of tariffs. over the past year, since the year started. They've done it very quietly. For instance, in our estate, there was a change in tariff in March. From what we used to pay, it was done quietly and nobody knew. But I think this one has become very obvious because of the huge jump that is going to happen as a result of the removal of the subsidy in the petroleum, in the electricity subsector. So we expect that the government will look at this holistically, considering the palliatives that needs to be introduced that will allow and cushion the effect of this increment, considering that there's also been a huge increase in petrol prices, a huge increase because of the dollar being floated, and the impact on the masses at the moment. So we expect that the government will not continue to respond to the inflation and increase regularly as it will happen due to the factors of inflation and factors of Naira being floated.
Yeah, I guess the flotation here has a huge domino effect on the economy. You know, at this time, I know I'm paying so much for electricity right now. Can't imagine what a 40% increase will look like. That would cost a fortune. And I know you're involved in, managing estates there, through the Residents Association. How do you see, households, businesses dealing with this? Affordability is a definite concern. How can both segments manage power usage, with this much increase?
Okay, I think that there's a lot we can do in terms of the power management to be able to reduce the cost impact. Certainly, affordability is a key issue. One thing is to make sure everybody is metered. There's been a shortfall in the metering rollout. So government needs to make sure that we do away with estimated billing. So, residents and people know how much they consume in electricity. That's one way that this can help manage this impact. And then there should be encouragement of people on use of power. Now, when you look at your load, you can look at what your household usage is. Certainly, there's some equipment, appliances that use more loads than others. A good example is your AC, air conditioners. There's some air conditioners you can do away with, and replace your air conditioners with inverter ACs. Inverter ACs are known to use less power and still give you the comfort you need. They pay for themselves. Yes, they are more expensive, but they pay for themselves over a 6 months period based on the analysis that we have done. So those are ways that residents and businesses can make effort in order to reduce this impact. Other ways would be the use of alternative energy. Government can step in here by providing a soft loan, at very low interest, so that people can transition to alternative power using solar. We know that it's capital intensive at the initial stage, but it pays for itself over a period. So when residents and businesses can get soft loans to go the route of solar, that also could be a way to manage the impact on this huge change in the tariff.
Yeah, because consumer income is really squeezed, at this time. And there's been a lot of chatter about, compressed natural gas, as a cheaper source of energy. Does that play into power generation at all?
Yes, it does. CNG is very fuel, it's efficient fuel, and it's also clean fuel. In addition to that, it's safe to use. A lot of people are always afraid that, okay, you're using gas and therefore you're subject to explosion. But the truth of the matter is CNG is, when it leaks, it emits straight into the air, into the atmosphere, and therefore it doesn't settle in. So the risk of explosion is very little. Now it also supports captive power solution. We know that one of the big challenges in adopting use of natural gas is the pipelines, which we don't have. So infrastructure is not there. But to ensure that we can use CNG as a better and more efficient use in power generation, government can support through PPP, individuals to set up various CNG locations dotted around the country. That way, individuals can adopt it in captive power to be able to support, and utilize as an efficient means of power generation. Hot estates can come together and, set up a captive CNG plant with an alternative PPP arrangement such that it can generate power at a much lower cost. Thank God for the new Electricity Act that have been signed by the president. It means, therefore, that states can go in and use this technology, use this CNG as an alternative fuel in a captive mode and reduce significantly the tariff that could be paid in turn by residents and stakeholders across the board.
And definitely, we've seen, some people, talking about how they've converted their petrol, generators to CNG, so that they can have those carburetors attached to it, so you can use, CNG, to power your generators. But there are safety concerns. You did mention that, and I did see the Lagos State, government talked about that, yesterday. But how do you, in making such conversions, how do you make sure, you're putting safety, at the fore? Is it just anybody that can just come and, help you convert your petrol generator to CNG?
Okay, now there are two things here. There is the CNG, which is a compressed natural gas. Then there's the LPG, which is the liquefied petroleum gas. Now, what we are seeing in the cylinders that people are using, changing their carburetor, is LPG, which is different from the CNG. CNG, the composition of CNG is more of methane, while the LPG has more component of propane. In the gas composition of that. Now, quite importantly, safety is necessary. There need to be standards. Government needs to step in and ensure that all the equipment, conversion kits that are used, that they meet the required standard, such that you can avoid, for those who are converting their small petroleum petrol generators to using LPG, it is certainly has been in existence for quite a while. So this is nothing new. What is happening is that it is now being adopted more widely than it used to be, because LPG is now cheaper than petrol. So it's now been adopted more. But as government, Lagos State government have rightly, stepped in to say there will be safety checks to ensure that, for instance, what's the distance between your generator and the LPG storage tank that you're using. All that needs to be put together in a way that it is safe to use. But it's been in existence, it's been used, and it's just like using gas in your house. At the moment, we all use LPG to cook. If there's a leak somewhere and it's in an enclosure, the chances of you having explosion is much more. So all these safety concerns for the LPG converted generator needs to be taken into consideration. Now, this is different from the CNG. CNG is the storage tank is a bit more stronger and more robust than what we have in LPG. And also, just as we said, it's composed more of methane, which again means that when there is any leak, it emits quite immediately, because it's less dense than air. So all these are the safety that are around the use of CNG. It's majorly for bigger capacity of engine compared to the LPG, which, as you see, is people are now adopting that much more commonly.
Yeah.
I see it as a good alternative in the long run for residents to reduce the use of generator, but safety must be taken into consideration. And rightly so, Lagos State government is doing that.
Yeah, because the way some houses are set up, it's not easy to actually, have that conversion and have a cylinder, somewhere around, your generators for that kind of setup. But, consumers are really pressed, at this time with squeezed incomes. We've seen, high prices with PMS, and now expecting, electricity tariffs to go up. How much do you think, the average Nigerian consumer can take, at this point? What should the government be doing right now to create that buffer that, that people need at this point?
Okay, certainly government can do a lot. First of all, this electricity tariff that is coming in 1st of July. We request that government will phase it rather than just putting the 40% increase all at once. Let it come in phases. So that way, knowing that there's already, people are already being squeezed as a result of the increase in the petrol prices and floating of the dollar. Government should also bring in buses. For instance, they can partner with the various taxi unions and give them a petrol card, whereby with those petrol cards, they agree with them to keep price at a certain limit, whereby they can now get the petrol card to buy petrol at certain designated filling station at a much reduced price. So therefore, it's not passing the entire increase in price to the consumers, especially on critical routes where workers use to go to work, to go to market. So those are areas government can come in, bring in buses, that can, in effect, reduce the cost. Thank God, Lagos State government, through Oando initiative, has had electric vehicles on the road. That is foresight. Those foresights that can now, be used and roll out more in such a way that prices that people pay on critical routes, to and fro work can be kept at a minimum in order to ameliorate the impact on this cost. So those are, little things government can do to ensure that workers and citizens alike are prevented from, the huge impact that has happened due to this increase at the moment.
Unpacked, then I do hope that there's some kind of, phased increase instead of a one-time, increase, because people are going through a lot, right now. But thank you so much. It's a Prospect Madufuro, Chairman, Rome Gardens Estate Residents Association. It was great having your perspective today.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.